Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the long-awaited pregnancy video. I'm really excited to make this. I wanted to wait until the pregnancy was completely over to combine all 3 trimesters in one video, so this will be a longer video. For those of you who are at a certain part in your pregnancy, feel free to go ahead and skip to the trimester. I'm going to put the timestamps down below so you can do that. Although I will be listing off like symptoms of what was happening to me during each trimester, I'm also going to combine it with like a story time because I think my pregnancy was, well, every pregnancy is unique, but I feel like mine was unique in that almost every trimester was separated by different travel and different crazy life events. So I'm going to kind of mix that in with what was happening because it's all relevant and it was all part of my journey. Having said that, I have gone ahead and made a list brainstorming all of the symptoms from each trimester that I remember most clearly so that I can start off each section with that if you're just interested in that part of the information that I'm giving here. When I found out I was pregnant, I was in Colombia. I was with my partner Mauricio. He's from Cartagena, which is a coastal city on the Caribbean side. Needless to say, it is very hot in Cartagena, and I love the heat. I love warm weather climates. I live in Rio. It has been a long time since I've endured a winter, years in fact. Cartagena is on a different level, okay? And when you're pregnant, I didn't know this. There were a lot of symptoms that I had no idea existed until I went through it. But when you're pregnant, your basal body temperature actually rises, and so you feel hotter to begin with. So being in a hot environment was very challenging for me. I was only there for the first trimester, and it was by far the most, well, I say the most miserable trimester, but each trimester came with its challenges. My first trimester, I had morning sickness, which is to say I was nauseous, and it's not just in the morning, it's all day. Anyone who tells you differently is probably a man. I had zero appetite. I did not want to eat anything. I think that was partially also due to the fact that I wasn't a big fan of Colombian food. I liked Colombian food, but after 3 months of eating it, I was like, a lot of fried food, a lot of meat, a lot of carbs, and I was just like, no, I wanted light fruit. I wanted mangoes. I actually would eat a mango for breakfast every day, and people thought I was weird. I say that I pretty much lived on Pedialyte and saltines, which I know is really not healthy, but that was the only thing I could stomach. I was throwing up constantly. I was constantly tired and lethargic. Constipation, man, that was a continuous thing throughout the whole pregnancy, but especially in the first trimester, I felt extremely constipated, which I felt no one really tells you about. Your boobs start growing and become extremely sensitive. Like, I didn't even want to touch them. I was losing weight because of my loss of appetite, so I was a little bit concerned, but at the same time I was like, well, I know that this will change. This is just temporary. This is the first trimester. I also felt extremely thirsty, and that again was something that was throughout the whole pregnancy, but especially in the first trimester. I felt, oh my gosh, I could just drink and drink and drink and drink as much water as I could possibly stomach. It was just the only thing I wanted to drink. I was also constantly out of breath. Just the simplest things would make me wheeze. I was just like, oh, constantly like short of breath. These are all normal symptoms because you need to drink a lot more water because your body is producing like a third more blood volume or something. Like your lungs, everything is moving around inside of you. All of your body's preparing itself with the placenta, which is a new organ that it's growing inside. So there's lots of things happening on the inside that it's just kind of confusing, like to you on the outside. You don't know what's happening. It's kind of like an alien is taking over. It's kind of a funny analogy, but it's true. That's what it feels like. You're like, what's happening? I also had extremely itchy skin, especially around my abdomen and on my breasts. I felt like just I wanted to itch and scratch at it, so I was doing a lot of massage with essential oils, with coconut oil, avocado oil, just trying to soothe whatever skin issues I had. I was not feeling like I was glowing, although people were saying that, oh, your skin looks great and your hair's growing. I feel like more of that is second trimester. Second trimester was amazing for me. A lot of these can be carried through the entire pregnancy, but first trimester especially, I felt some wild mood swings, and I felt really out of control of my sense of self. Whatever I was feeling, I felt perfectly validated, but I couldn't explain why. I had a really hard time explaining why I was angry or why I was upset or why I was so irritable or why I was so sad. I just knew that I was, and I couldn't explain it, and that was good enough for me. I was like, you know what, I'm pregnant, let me be. So I found out I was pregnant on December 15th, 2017. I will never forget the day. I had suspected that I was pregnant previously when a few weeks before when Mao and I were visiting his mom in a different town. And I actually took a pregnancy test at her house. And it turned out negative. It was about a week or two before my missed period. And so I was just kind of like, huh, that's weird. Like, I thought I was pregnant. In fact, this is crazy. There's no way to prove this, so it's just my word and my feeling, but I swear to you that I know the moment when I conceived my son. Like, it's crazy to say that. Like, it is to say that I remember the sex that got me pregnant. But I remember having sex that day, and I remember immediately after feeling like, I'm pregnant. We had stopped using contraceptives back in August. Just kind of thinking like, oh yeah, we're ready, like we want to get pregnant, but you know, let's just see what happens. So we were aware of the possibilities of getting pregnant. In that way it wasn't a surprise, but at the same time it was a surprise. We didn't think that it would happen so soon. But sure enough, I conceived in November and I found out I was pregnant in December. Like I said, I was back in Cartagena. I was in this house living with a lot of family members, like a typical Colombian household. And I remember having to sneak into the bathroom with my pregnancy test, being all sly. The pregnancy tests are pretty basic. It's literally just a stick. There's no fancy screen or anything. I peed on the stick, and it turned out negative, and I was like, this is weird, because at this point my period was late. And then I looked at the box and it says, please wait 10 minutes for the final result. And so I was like, okay, so just twiddling my thumbs there in the bathroom waiting for this result. And sure enough, I see a double line, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. Oh wow, like it's a whirlwind of emotion that hits you in that moment. And I remember thinking like, I need to take advantage of this moment, because this is literally the only moment in my lifetime where I will be the only person who knows that I'm pregnant, because of course I'm going to tell my partner. I hadn't really planned how to do it, but I just knew like, okay, I really want to treasure this moment. So immediately I went into my room and I wrote a journal entry to my future child explaining like how excited I was and how thrilled I am, and in this moment I'm the only one who knows, him and I, or her and I didn't know the gender obviously. Wasn't planning on telling Mao like exactly then and there, but he just walked into the room, and so I have the worst poker face and I just couldn't hold back, so I just told him. I was like, guess what? I'm pregnant. And he couldn't believe it either, and I hadn't thought this through of like, oh, I want to wait to tell people so that you know, in case something happens, if there's a miscarriage, if there's some sort of complications, you know, it's generally a wise thing to not tell people right away. But of course, the whole family, the whole neighborhood knew within seconds. I feel like it just spread like wildfire. Everyone knew, everyone was ecstatic. It was a very joyful moment. We had decided not to announce it to the public, which is to say Facebook, until I was a little bit further along. We announced it when I was 11 weeks. I had an ultrasound there in Cartagena just to make sure everything looked good, which it did. Almost the first third of my pregnancy. I was there in Colombia, in Cartagena. Like I said, it is hot as hell in Cartagena. Being pregnant there was really miserable, and with the emotional mood swings I was going through and just feeling generally ill and being extremely lethargic and tired, I was not feeling sociable, to say the least. So I was a hermit. I isolated myself big time. I was just where the internet was, where the air conditioning was, and that was it. Like, I just stayed closed off in the room. I would come out at nighttime. I would come out when I had to pee, which was frequently, but I just was basically staying in my room as much as possible because I didn't want to see anyone. I felt like maybe I had some of the baby blues, but more than anything, I was just really uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable being in this environment where it was so bloody hot. Interestingly enough, Mauricio, my partner, was at the same time experiencing a lot of the same symptoms I was, which is not uncommon for the partner to kind of take on some of the symptoms. Some people claim that it's not real. I think it is real. I don't think he was faking it, because he was really ill. He was having a hard time eating, he was throwing up, he was bedridden, he was super tired. He had a lot of the same symptoms he was mirroring from me to him, and so I don't know, part of me was like, oh, you're taking away my limelight. But then at the same time, I'm like, oh, I don't really want the limelight. Like, you can have it. At about 13 weeks, I flew to the US. So this is close to entering my second trimester. During this time in the US, it was freezing. It was in February, so I was going to Iowa to visit my family. It's not where I'm from, but it's where my parents live currently. And so it was freezing cold, and for the first time in my life, I was really excited to be in a cold environment. I was very ill prepared. I had one pair of jeans, like all the shirts I could layer with like a jean jacket, because that was all I had as far as winter clothes. Nothing. And my Havaianas. So, needless to say, my mom sees me at the airport and she's like, you're not prepared for this, are you? And I'm like, no, no, no. I was in the US for a month. First half in Iowa, second half in Utah, visiting old friends and family. Again, cold environment. It was wonderful. I felt so comfortable. I remember that night feeling so cuddled in my big duvet and just being able to sleep for the first time, like get a really, really good night's sleep for the first time in months. A lot of the negative symptoms from the first trimester started to teeter off when I entered the second trimester. The loss of appetite especially went away. It was replaced with ravenous hunger. This was really special for me because I hadn't been home to the US in almost 2 years, and of course, me being from the US, all of my childhood memories, the home cooking, the comfort foods are all, you know, heavy American, fatty, terrible foods, but I love them. And so I had actually made a list of all the foods I wanted to eat. I was like, make sure I get all of these foods in me before I leave. Number one on the list was actually a bagel with cream cheese, which I bought in the airport. Best bagel and cream cheese ever. Like, all of my cravings, all of my like food sensitivities kicked in this month. I was just ready and roaring to go. Lots and lots of appetite. I wanted to eat like every hour. I was so hungry all the time. Like, I would eat something, I would feel fine, and then an hour later I wanted to keep eating. And I really let go of myself there because I really just wanted to enjoy it. I knew, like, okay, if I were in the US for the entirety of my pregnancy, that would probably be dangerous. But for me, only being there a month, it really allowed me to just let loose and enjoy not having a diet. Enjoy eating whatever I wanted. Of course, I gained weight, but it wasn't anything too extreme. And I felt fine. I felt really good. I was still a bit constipated, definitely because of my diet choices, but at the same time, it was worth it. Entering the second trimester, some of the symptoms carried over, most notably tiredness, constipation, itchy skin, out of breath, feeling like, you know, shortness of breath. And a new very unpleasant symptom that started in my second trimester was heartburn, which is supposedly a sign that your child has hair, because it's the same hormone, progesterone, that is responsible for their hair growth and responsible for your heartburn. I don't know how true that is, but my baby was born with a lot of hair and I had a lot of heartburn. So there you go. Some positive things of the second trimester is I felt like my energy was back. It's kind of a contradiction there. I just said I was really tired, but my energy was back. When I would lay down, when I gave myself time to rest, I was very tired. But compared to the first trimester, I had a lot more like gumption to just go out, go walking, go do stuff, move myself. I was feeling a lot more of myself, but with a little bit of a pooch. There's kind of this annoying phase in pregnancy where you're not quite showing, like you have a bump, but it's not quite identifiable as a baby bump, and you kind of just look like you've gained weight. And it's really annoying. I wanted to have like a sign over my head saying like, I am pregnant. Do not judge me. Some positive symptoms is that I really felt like my hair and skin were glowing. I felt very radiant inside and out for the most part. I was in the US for a month, but then I actually went to Uruguay, and there I was living with my friend. We were living off the land. I was eating much healthier. I was walking like 3 to 6 kilometers a day. I felt like, okay, any of the health setbacks that I gave myself in the US were made up for in my time in Uruguay and then later on in pregnancy. Mauricio and I are not married. For the time being, visa options are very limited for him, and so I wanted to just make it a quick trip to the US to enjoy my family and then come back to South America. We looked into having the baby in Colombia, but it really wasn't ideal for a lot of reasons. Primarily visa-wise, Colombia is pretty strict with outsiders, and so I had already exceeded my visa limit and had to renew it, and then that renewal was going to expire before the baby was going to come. Also, the public health system is not the greatest. It wasn't gonna happen. Colombia was not the place. Job prospects were really low the whole time. That was an ongoing issue while we were in Colombia. So it just didn't make sense really to have the baby in Colombia. The next best option that we had decided on was Buenos Aires, Argentina, which is where Mauricio had lived for about 4 years. He still had family and friends there. He had connections, job, prospects, everything going for him there. So we had actually bought him a ticket to get to Argentina, and the idea was, okay, I'm gonna go to Uruguay, visit a friend, and then we'll either meet up in Uruguay or I'll go to Argentina and he'll set things up for me there. We'll figure it out, but at some point we're going to reunite and the baby will be born in Argentina. Well, that didn't happen, and I'll tell you why. It ended up being all good and all for the best, but I was really, really stressed out at this point because I didn't know when I was gonna see my baby daddy again. I'm in the US and Mauricio was due to fly out. Granted, he had like the world's worst itinerary. He was traveling from Cartagena to Bogota, Bogota to Lima, Peru, Lima, Peru to Santiago, Chile, and then Chile to Buenos Aires. It was like over almost 48 hours of travel, which I've done that before. It's not easy, it's not fun by any means. Basically what happened is Mauricio lost his flight in Lima. He got stranded in Lima, Peru. He went out to see a friend, which I encouraged him to do. I used to live in Lima and I told him, you know, you have 12 hours there, you really should get out and eat something out on the street. It's much better, it's much cheaper. Enjoy the city while you're there. If you have a friend there, even better. So I was encouraging him to leave, but what happened was he left and he came back just in the nick of time to get his flight, but in the meantime they had changed his flight to be slightly earlier, which I'd never heard of happening before, but apparently that's a thing, and he was disconnected from all Wi-Fi and any notifications, so he didn't know, and so he missed his flight. And we didn't have the funds, we didn't have the money to buy him another flight, so I was freaking out. I already had my flight booked to Uruguay, and I was just like, oh my gosh. I get to Uruguay and I'm like, okay, we're on the same continent now, but when am I gonna see you? What's the plan? What are we doing? At this point, he had been in Lima for about 3 weeks. He had decided to go to Cusco. Finally, you know, we were talking on the phone and I'm just like, let's just go back to Brazil. Like, let's forget about Argentina. Let's just go back to Brazil. We love it there. Winter is approaching because the hemispheres are opposite. It just makes sense. Let's just go back to Brazil. And it actually made a lot of sense because as I did more research, I discovered that Brazil is actually the only country in all of South America where not only is your child considered automatically a citizen for being born there, but also the parents, regardless of their nationality, they can also apply for citizenship. I should say residency first and then apply for citizenship. So it was a loophole, a huge loophole for me to be able to stay in Brazil legally. In and of itself, that was enough of an incentive. Plus the public health system here is pretty decent and it's free and it just made a lot of sense. Let's go to Brazil. So we decided to go to Brazil. Mao gets a bus, a 3-day bus journey to come to Brazil. He arrived there a little bit before I did, and then I took a bus from Uruguay to Brazil. So we met up in Rio. It was all fireworks, amazing. Had my baby bump, just feeling so energized and so happy to be reunited with him. I was eating better and I was exercising more, not really consciously like going out of my way to exercise, but I was walking a lot and I was swimming in the ocean a lot, so I count that as exercise. I wasn't skating, which is my ideal form of exercise. I really hate going to the gym, so that didn't even cross my mind. I feel extremely triggered personally by knowing numbers and weight and everything. I had gone through a whole phase of my life, which is worth another video, of eating disorder and just general body dysmorphia. I just didn't even want to go there. I was thinking, okay, you know what, my body's performing a miracle. I'm gonna be free to eat what I want to eat, but I'm also gonna be conscious of moving myself as much as possible, but I'm not gonna stress about it and I'm not gonna look at the numbers. Entering my 3rd trimester, this is where things kind of take another dip. Your energy goes down dramatically and it just kind of keeps dropping until the baby comes because you keep getting bigger. So it makes sense that you're just kind of on your last leg and you're feeling like, okay, really out of breath, really exhausted all the time. It's a lot harder to get a good night's sleep because you can really only sleep on your sides. If you sleep on your back, then it cuts off the blood circulation and it just doesn't feel good and it's not good for the baby. Besides the difficulty sleeping, I also felt more constipated, heartburn continued, and then also extreme, I actually wrote this down twice. This is how extreme it was. Extreme moodiness. The mood swings, just wow, the hormones. It's hard to explain, and I really feel for all the partners out there, whether you're male or female, watching your partner go through this hugely transformative experience. Your body is being taken over by another being, and you just feel all out of sorts. My best advice to partners, just try and validate them as much as possible. That doesn't mean that they're right, because I think a lot of the times when I would get in these arguments with my partner, I was probably wrong. You know, technically speaking, I was wrong, but I felt so like, just listen to me, like just hear me. You know, the best thing you can do is just to hear them. You can say like, I hear you, I understand you, and that doesn't necessarily mean like I agree with you. Obviously by this point, baby is kicking all the time. He was moving around so much. I remember feeling like he was doing backflips in my belly. I started feeling his movements around week 16, so going into the second trimester, which was really exciting at first, but by the third trimester, you're kind of tired of it. You're kind of, I mean, it's exciting and you're happy to feel him, but at the same time, you're like, in my case, and I think this is pretty common, my baby would move a lot when I was laying down. Like when I was trying to rest, he was active, and when I was out walking around, he was fine. He was just, you know, not moving at all. So some more annoying third trimester symptoms were definitely, primarily above all, the need to pee, which felt like it was constant, okay? Like I would literally just empty my bladder and I would get up and I'd feel like I have to pee again. It really obstructed me and it really annoyed me because I felt like, okay, I have to know where the public restrooms are at all times if I leave the house. I constantly needed to pee. You constantly have this pressure just like sitting on you. And the most frustrating thing is that half the time nothing even comes out. It's just the urge to pee, but then nothing happens. I felt really sore in my back and in my belly as well. I was having some contractions, some Braxton Hicks contractions, which are very normal. You start Googling everything, every little tiny thing. You're like, oh, what's happening? It's exciting. It's very exciting, but it's also very exhausting. My baby came at 41 weeks, so I was a little bit overdue. And those last 3 weeks or so, it was just really difficult to maintain my sanity because I was in constant pain, you know, like you can kind of feel the head of the baby like positioning itself. It feels like, this is gonna sound so weird, but it feels like you have a giant bruise on your vagina. And any kind of movement, especially standing up, like it just puts added pressure on your pelvic floor and it hurts. It really hurts down there, and you're like, oh, when is this gonna end? You're just really kind of like looking all the time like, I want this to be over. I've endured so much. Let me tell you, it's going to be over. There is an end date. You're not going to be pregnant forever, but I feel your pain. I do feel how exhausting it is at this point. You're just like, okay, I'm ready to have my body back. I'm ready to be myself again with a baby, please. Because of how everything happened for me with my travel plans and not really knowing where we were going to be, I had a really hard time planning my baby visits. Like I didn't actually start having regular doctor's appointments until I think I was like over 20 weeks pregnant, which is pretty late in the game, and it's not recommended. It wasn't even until I was about 18 weeks pregnant that I knew I would be in Brazil for the birth. So up until that point, I was just kind of lost, like floating around, like I don't know how to prepare myself because I need resources where I'm going to be and I don't know where I'm going to be. Even before I was pregnant, I knew I wanted to give birth in the most natural way possible, which is to say drug-free. And so I was looking up information on midwives and doulas and everything is pretty expensive here if you're going to go private in Brazil. At least it was out of my budget. And so I ideally wanted a home birth, but that wasn't going to happen financially. And so I was looking through the public system, and there was actually one midwife house that was government owned and operated here in Rio. There's only one in the entire state of Rio, and it happened to be in the city of Rio, but very far away, like with public transportation, 2 to 3 hours depending on traffic one way, which was a haul. It was very hard to get there, but I got there as much as I possibly could. I had all my prenatal stuff done there. I ended up giving birth in a hospital, but that's a whole other story. Try to enjoy it as much as possible because there are sweet moments. I know there's a lot of negative symptoms, but at the same time, you are performing a huge miracle. You are creating life literally within you. There are 2 heartbeats. I remember whenever I had the opportunity to hear my son's heartbeat, it was tear jerking. Like, I would just be like, oh my gosh, there's 2 hearts inside of me. Like, just soak it up as much as you possibly can and know that it's temporary and it will pass. I promise. Alright, you guys, if you like this video, please show me some love. Go ahead and comment down below any of your stories, any of your experiences, any questions, anything at all. I'm all ears. I want to know what's on your mind. Stay tuned for more videos like this. I'm planning on making more, talking about my birth story, talking about my postpartum journey, postpartum depression, all the good stuff that happens post-pregnancy, as well as what it's like now for me being a mom. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys next time.